the seventh planet, a world with a seventh sense? Can they make things and people appear and disappear?
Who opened the airlock?
Have they new and terrifying powers of mind over matter?
His arm's frozen.
Can they reach deep into your subconscious to make you feel terrors more horrifying than you know of?
Give us an hour. If we don't show up, you'll know you don't have to wait any longer.
You have come to destroy me. But my weapons are more powerful than yours. Your own fears have created the means of your destruction.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're gonna kiss me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me!
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're gonna make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first!
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
This is the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
I'm Jeff Markin.
And we're going to see how many jokes about Uranus we can cram into one episode when we talk about Journey to the Seventh Planet from 1962.
Journey to the Seventh Planet was directed by Sidney W. Pink, from a screenplay by Ib Melchior and Sidney W. Pink, and was produced by Sidney Pink for Cinemagic Incorporated and released by American International Pictures.
Journey to the Seventh Planet stars John Agar as Captain Don Graham, Karl Ottosen as Commander Erik Nilsson, Peter Mönch as Lieutenant Karl Henrich, Ove Sprogøe as Barry O'Sullivan, Louis Miehe Renard as Svend Viltoff, Anne Smyrner as Ingrid, Greta Thyssen as Greta.
Also appearing are Mimi Heinrich as Ursula, Annie Birgit Garde as Ellen, Ulla Moritz as Lise, Bente Juel as Colleen, and uncredited is Julian Burton as the voice of the alien brain.
Journey to the Seventh Planet opens with narration over rocket launch footage.
A narrator tells us there are no limits to the imagination and man's ability to make reality out of his visions is his greatest strength. Through this skill, he has been able to conquer time and space. The story you are about to see takes place after man has solved the complex mysteries of space travel. The year is 2001. Life is changed now. The planet Earth is no longer racked by wars and threats of annihilation.
Oh my God.
Man has learned to live with himself. The United Nations is the sole governing body of the world, and the great hunger now is for knowledge. All the planets near the Sun, including Saturn, have been explored and charted by the UN Space Fleet. But as yet, no sign of life in any form has been discovered. The search goes on, and systematic exploration continues. Spaceship Explorer 12 is now on a mission to survey, land, and investigate the seventh planet, Uranus.
That's how they're going to say it, huh?
That's how they say it throughout the film. It's pronounced Uranus.
Yeah, we're going to say Uranus, as in, now it's time to probe Uranus. I love movies that are set in their future but our past. I just get a kick out of what they imagine life will be like because I would say they never get it right. And just thinking of the year 2001, I have a whole different frame of reference. Anyway, the credits roll as our rocket travels to Uranus.
We see the rocket pass Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. So it's on the right course. Although it seems unlikely all these planets would be in alignment during this trip, but not impossible.
It's happened before. I think very recently we could look up into our sky and see 5 planets at once. So that's the smallest quibble I would have about this movie. Aboard the ship, Horndog American Commander Don Graham takes his pinup photo away from Commander Erik Nilsson of the UK, or so they say. The photo Commander Nilsson is admiring is of Greta Thyssen, Miss Denmark 1954.
Don says he was supposed to have a date with her tonight, but he was told that today was U-Day, meaning that I guess they don't give their astronauts a lot of foreknowledge about their missions.
Right.
They just on call all the time, and he got the call. It's time to go.
It's time for Uranus.
Commander Erik is admiring the picture, but Don tells him, sorry, this is private stock.
Oh, jeez.
Others on board are Barry O'Sullivan, the Irishman, Svend, the Swedish representative, and Karl, the German.
Svend tells Don that he should settle down like he did, showing off photos of his wife and daughter. But Don thinks of women as a hobby, a special interest. He wouldn't stay with the same one every day.
He says space is his vocation and women are his avocation.
The team, including Irish Barry O'Sullivan, razz Don's randy ways, and then Barry points out that his vices, food, are safer than Don's, and tells dewy-eyed Karl, a young astronaut from Germany, to take his advice.
Karl says there was a girl back home that he was interested in, but he hasn't done anything about it. Her name is Ursula. Don says he could hook Karl up when they get back to Earth. Then he remembers one girl, Lise, a real chick. Hey, she was German too. A UN biological expert. Boy, was she biological.
Ugh.
Don says that he wishes he could have taught her his kind of biology.
He's so gross. But all the men chuckle.
Yeah, this all sounds like basic locker room talk, but as we'll see, it's really vital to the plot of this film.
I know, it's weird. Then Commander Eric tells him to get back to space, and by space he means work.
Eric and Don take their posts, and Eric asks everyone to give their reports. Don goes first, giving their location by pointing to a paper map.
He says they just passed the moon 12 minutes ago, so I don't think they can take those opening credits as a travelogue of their actual journey. Then the men all check their waveform monitors and audio meters and say that the ship's running perfectly.
All systems are normal.
Those atomic engines are really going.
Then Eric hands Don a sealed letter. It's their flight instructions.
Yeah, it's got a red wax seal. Like you could open it up and find who won the Academy Award for Best Sound Editing.
Yeah, apparently they're not allowed to know their flight instructions ahead of time either.
They were kidnapped in the middle of the night and put on this spaceship. They have no idea what they're doing.
So Don opens up the letter and we see that it's dated September 10th, 2001.
That's what when we first started watching this movie and we got the narration that it was 2001, they said wars were over. And I'm like, well, what day is it? September 10th? And then that was the actual date on the letter. It's so weird when this happens. Last week we did Meteor, and in that episode, we saw basically a space shuttle called Challenger explode. And we saw the Twin Towers come down, the World Trade Center in New York City in this disaster movie that came out in 1979. And, anything could happen, but it just seems kind of prescient, accidentally, because these aren't scientists or historians coming up with these dates or events.
So continuing with the flight instructions, the letterhead says it's from the United Nations Space Headquarters, and their instructions are to approach the planet, orbit and survey, then land. They were supposed to investigate a radiation signal that has been detected on the planet's surface. They are not expected to encounter any life forms, but they are to try to locate and investigate the source of that signal. They only have 10 days. After that, they will lose their trajectory and their ride home.
Yeah, they'll miss their mission window of departure. Everyone on board says that they understand the time frame. Karl confesses to the jitters, so Don has one of the crew retract a piece of cardboard from the porthole window so newbie Karl can bask in the magnificence of the universe. And then I guess 2 to 3 years have elapsed, so they are past Saturn now and approaching Uranus, or Uranus. Uranus is in their sights. I just read that rocket travel, the fastest thus far, 25 years after 2001, that we've been able to get a probe from Earth to Uranus is 3 years minimum. But apparently they just did it over the course of a weekend with those atomic engines.
The crew begins their deceleration, and everybody straps in because they will be weightless for 2 minutes. And this movie doesn't have the budget to show that. But when they're in orbit, they do have the budget to show an apple floating.
Barry the foodie grabs it and says, "My last fresh frozen galaxial apple." And then he sniffs it. I guess he really is into fruit instead of women.
And then he stares at it as if he's frozen. Commander Eric orders his men to fire the retro rockets, but nothing happens. He looks around and realizes that everyone is frozen. Then he himself freezes.
And then an entity apparates onto the ship to do a monologue. This entity is represented by a wavy light that fills the screen.
The voice says that long has he waited for this moment. Give me your minds, your innermost thoughts. You are powerless. I shall drain your mind and bend your will to mine. We see that the light show that's presented isn't contained to the ship, and it continues on the planet's surface.
It seems to be emanating from a cavern in Uranus.
As the voice continues, you will submit and I shall possess you. Through your minds and body, I will rule you and make your world mine.
It's basically gloating right now. Back on the ship, everyone snaps out of their trance. They are confused. Commander Eric says the chronometer shows a time lapse of 2 hours. And how many days? Asks Barry, holding up remains of his apple, now about the size and shape of a prune. And everyone marvels at the shrunken apple head he's holding in his hand.
Matter can't react like that, says Don. But Commander Eric says they can figure this out later. Right now, they need to concentrate on landing. Barry wonders if they'll have a welcoming celebration. He smiles and looks around to see if anyone appreciated his joke. And now that they've landed, Commander Eric goes to the porthole to have a look around. What he and the others sees doesn't make sense.
What we see is a long shot of the landing site, which, through the magic of stop-motion photography, is transformed from a barren moon-like landscape to a lush green climate.
This planet is supposed to have an atmosphere of noxious gases and a temperature of negative 200 degrees, but it looks like an Earthian forest.
Is that a word, Earthian?
No. I looked it up.
Karl reports that the exterior radiation was normal. Compared to what? I don't know. Commander Eric orders everyone to do checks of the outside atmosphere and such, but the airlock opens itself and a rush of fresh air comes in.
Barry takes it upon himself to go check it out. He comes back and reports that the air is as breathable as they need it to be, so Eric decides they'll go exploring.
Without suits.
But he does suggest everyone bring their guns.
Naturally. The surface resembles a Pacific Northwest to me. It looks very piney. Svend looks gobsmacked. This landscape is very familiar to him. He spent his whole childhood there, so I guess it's more Sweden-y than Pacific Northwest. Svend points out some familiar landscapes as the others scoff. He's just imagining things.
The men begin to explore, proceeding cautiously. Svend pulls up a plant, and it seems to have been just plugged into the ground. It has no roots.
Don pulls up another and confirms. These all came from Michael's craft emporium.
He wonders how a plant can grow without roots.
What a dummy.
Then Barry looks behind him and sees an apple tree. He grabs an apple and takes a bite, which is probably not a good idea.
Oh, Eve.
Eating the fruit from an alien planet. And Don notes that the tree wasn't there when they walked past it just a moment ago.
Well, you should never eat the fruit of a tree you find in a strange landscape. That's like eating dinner with the Fae. They own your soul now. Anyhow, it tasted apple-y to him. Everyone is quite puzzled at this Alice in Wonderland forest, so they keep exploring.
Karl pulls back some brush and finds a barrier of some kind. It's like a wall.
But not.
Eric sends Barry and Svend to follow it and see if they can find the end. Eric puts his hand on it. It glows green, and Eric says it feels strange, like an air cushion, and they decide it must be some sort of a force field.
Yeah, because you can kind of see through it. It's not entirely opaque. Also, it tingles when you touch it. Ooh. Svend and Barry report that it's circling the whole area. Commander Eric pokes a stick through the field, and it comes back stripped of its bark. Well, at least we know it can be penetrated, quips Don. That's all we know, says Commander Eric. We still don't know what's on the other side.
I'll find out, Karl says eagerly as he plunges his arm into the force field. He screams, and the others pull him out. His hand is now blue. It's been frozen.
It's been ice burnt. Later, around a fire, Eric tells the others that they're there to explore Uranus, so they're going to have to get around that wall. Don thinks the answers to their questions could be right in front of them. Nothing in front of us is real, shouts Eric. It's like a weird hallucination, taken from their minds.
So beyond that wall is the real Uranus. And some power beyond their understanding is making this happen.
Barry returns to the others to report that Karl, who is resting, has been completely healed. His arm is fine as if he'd never been flash frozen, and everyone's glad to hear it.
Then Barry sits with the others and buries his head between Don's legs. Barry looks quite comfortable, but Don doesn't look thrilled by this turn of events.
It looks like it was a non-consensual snuggle.
Don't you find it right pleasing to be here, Commander? Asks Barry. Don doesn't, and he shoves Barry off of him.
And then he jokes about there being no leprechauns on Uranus. Barry calls Eric a city person, but Commander Eric isn't. He describes his bucolic, non-city upbringing in what sounds like Scandinavia, and as he describes his home, elements of it start appearing behind him. A windmill, some birch trees. The others watch, mouths agape as these things appear.
Except for Svend, who's too engulfed in Eric's story to notice. Eric tells of a girl named Ingrid. Then he notices that Don and Barry seem distracted. What's the matter? Asks Eric. Don points, and Eric and Svend look back to see the vision. Then Eric commands Svend to go back to the ship, and for Don and Barry to get the guns. They're going to pay that mirage a little visit.
They end up outside a home on an estate. Eric says that one building is his father's barn. Don says, I thought you said this was an illusion. Eric opens a barn door, and the three are almost hit by some swinging tackle, although we did joke that it was a sex swing.
Eric, Don, and Barry enter the barn and start looking around. That door, says Eric, should lead directly to the house.
Do people really attach barns to their house in Great Britain / Sweden / Denmark?
So they venture through the door and begin looking around.
That weird light entity is inside, and then it transforms into the sexy but stoic form of Ingrid, the girl in Eric's story.
Ingrid, says Eric. Hello, Eric, says Ingrid. Eric tells Barry to check the rest of the house and for Don to stay here. Yes, sir, smiles Don. Eric asks her to confirm that she is Ingrid, and she does. And Eric asks where she came from. I've always been here, says Ingrid.
Eric comes back and says that they're alone there, just as Ingrid said. Eric orders everyone back to the ship. Don's bummed, but Eric is firm. As they go, Ingrid says she'll be there when he wants her, and then she goes into energy-saving mode and just stands there with a blue light on her face.
Eric, Don, and Barry regroup outside. Barry asks why did they leave? They could have found out something. And Don thinks that things were just getting interesting.
Everyone has different reasons for staying, and Don was just horny.
Whoever thought up that Ingrid really knew what they were doing. Eric thinks their best bet is to return to the ship while they figure out how to proceed.
Back at the ship, Commander Eric and Barry ascend the ladder up to the capsule, but Don lingers about at the bottom for some reason. The entity reappears and this time conjures up a little dish of dream girl for Don.
Don turns around to see that Lisa, that German biological girl, is there.
Lisa wants Don to go off with her, but he's mindful of his duty. He tells her that she can count on him for tonight, though, and then she walks cleavage first into the camera.
Don is happy by this turn of events, but he thinks he could do better. So he stares off into space, the lights go again, and this time the voice behind him brings in the Danish bombshell Greta Thyssen.
Yeah, Don seems a little bit more enthusiastic about Miss Denmark 1954, but he still won't walk off with her. Duty still calls, and so does Barry.
Greta says that there is no guarantee that he'll ever see her again if he doesn't take advantage of the situation right now. Don says he'd like to see her again, and Greta says that she's sure he will, if he wishes to.
Don makes a reluctant departure, but first asks if she's real. She kisses him. Therefore, she's real.
So Don joins the others on the ship, and Eric asks what kept him. Duty, says Don.
It's always duty with him.
Eric asks him to elaborate, and Don said he was interrogating 2 others who appeared. 2 more girls, smiles Svend. Figures with you down there.
They know him so well. Eric ignores all this nonsense and says that he, Don, and Karl will suit up and plunge through Uranus's barrier. Barry and Svend are to wait 6 hours in the ship, and then go to the clearing that they're going through and wait for another hour. If they don't show, Barry and Svend should take off, if possible.
So now Eric, Don, and Karl are wearing their deep blue spacesuits with yellow helmets and red gloves, and they're at the force field. Karl volunteers to be the first to go through, but Eric tells him no, that's his job. As they're arguing, Don steps through the field.
I just want to describe what this looks like real quick. It looks like they moved the frame of film that we're watching just a little bit to the left, and so there's this black nothingness on the edge of the frame. I almost expect to see film sprockets going up it. Kind of reminds me of that Daffy Duck cartoon where he steps out of the frame of the cartoon.
Eric turns to find Don is gone. Eric calls out, but Don doesn't respond. Then Don's arm appears through the barrier, beckoning them to follow. Once they pass through the force field, Eric asks Don why he didn't respond. Don says he didn't hear a thing and surmises that radio waves cannot penetrate the force field.
Everyone looks around and sees that they're in a frozen, cave-like landscape. Karl checks his meter and says that the radiation is pretty high there, so they go explore this strange new world. They're heading towards the strongest radiation signal, but first Commander Eric and Karl mark their position. Don has wandered off alone.
Don falls into a patch of quick snow. It's like quicksand, but it's ammonia snow, so it's dry and has no adhesion.
Don calls out for help. Eric and Karl try to save him. It's a struggle, but they pull him out. Eric orders them to stay on the rocks as much as possible from here on out, and they press on. Eric notices some razor-sharp stalagmites that could rip their suits open. Just an important foreshadowing moment there. And then we see that the entity is watching as they go into a cave.
They continue on, and they find a mass in a hole, kind of a gelatinous glob.
Looks like green lava.
Eric comments that this is the first movement they've seen since they crossed the barrier. Karl fires his gun into it, and then we hear that voice.
You feeble, foolish men. You come to destroy me with your puny, useless weapons, but my weapons are more powerful than yours. Entity tells him that it will use their minds against them, and it challenges them. Come at me, bro. We'll see who survives. But there's no indication that they heard any of that. I think they're in a trance again.
So what he's doing is kind of like Gozer in Ghostbusters, where he's giving them the option to think of their destructor, and they don't think of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Probably because they haven't seen that movie yet.
What they think of, or one of them is thinking of, is kind of a lizard, one-eyed rat thing.
It's like a naked mole rat, but it's a cyclops. And also kind of like a dinosaur.
And it's bipedal.
And it's ugly. And, even worse, it has a gaze that holds Karl in a trance. Eric tells Karl to snap out of it, and then they all run, but they hit a dead end in the cave. So they have no choice but to shoot at it.
So they shoot their laser guns at the creature, and a shot to the eye blinds it.
Also enrages it.
When I yell, "Run," says Eric. He shouts, "Now," and they all run past the monster. That was easy.
They exit through the barrier into the illusion of safety surrounding the ship. Don wonders why their host couldn't have dreamed up a better welcoming committee. On cue, the entity has Ingrid call out to Eric and Greta seductively purr Don's name. Don's ready to go for it. He says, "I can handle this kind of monster." But Eric says no. They're going back to the ship.
Back on the ship, the men are contemplating that creature that attacked them. Eric says that it was a member of the rodent family, but it shouldn't be able to survive here on Uranus. Karl admits that he had always had a fear of rats, and it was his mind that created the beast. He apologizes for his hesitation out there, but his fears got the better of him. Barry has a theory about what's going on. He asks Eric if he's ever been in love. Eric doesn't see what that has to do with anything, but admits that he hasn't. "Wouldn't you say that girl, Ingrid, is just about perfect?" asks Barry. Eric realizes what Barry's getting at. Their minds are being probed. Duh.
So it's not just drawing on their greatest fears, but their greatest desires, which we kind of figured out about 20 minutes ago when all the pinup models started attacking them.
It's obvious that whatever is doing this doesn't intend to kill them. As Karl points out, that would be easy enough to do. It could just make that paradise outside the ship disappear.
Yeah, is their atmosphere imaginary as well? Because I think that even if you're imagining oxygen, that doesn't keep your lungs from exploding when you try to breathe nothingness.
Eric decides that whoever is doing this can only be doing it for one reason: to find out what makes them tick.
He notes that the one-eyed rat thing appeared just after Karl fired into the lava pit. Then it withdrew into the mountain, and he posits that there's something in the underground caves of Uranus that they should explore. But first, he needs to talk to that village girl for any answers she can provide.
"Of course," smiles Barry, and the men all exchange grins as Eric leaves. They look out the porthole to watch him go. "Paradise Uranus," muses Don, complete with rats, several eaves, and even Barry's apples.
Now we're back in Eric's childhood home, where Eric grills Ingrid as to who or what is behind all this. Ingrid says she doesn't know much, but confesses that there's a lone being on this planet. It can use the full capacity of its brain, unlike us weak and stupid humans. And it exists everywhere on the planet. Eric asks if it took over their minds on the ship, and Ingrid confirms this.
"Why doesn't it do that now?" asks Eric. "Conditions are not right," says Ingrid. "The weightlessness," surmises Eric. He asks Ingrid how she knows all this. "I just do," says Ingrid. Eric decides that if this being is creating all this, they'd better leave, right now. "It will never let you go alive," says Ingrid. Then we hear the life form's voice again. "Your courage is great, but I am still here. I will destroy you."
And now we're on that exploratory mission with Don, Karl, and Eric. Eric sets a timer so they can probe the caves for an hour or two. After that, they're in danger of running out of oxygen. So they descend into the bowels of Uranus, and they find a cavern where the radiation is pulsing and the temperature is rising.
Don wonders if maybe they should start back. They've been out for over an hour. But Eric says they still have plenty of oxygen, so they should proceed. And besides, there's a pulsating blue light up ahead, and he wants to investigate it. So they go into another chamber of the cave, and the alien entity is aware of their presence.
It has a blinking strobing light that gives off a hypnotic spiral effect that has Karl frozen in his tracks. The alien being is here, Eric declares. Karl can't read the meter, being frozen. So Don does. The radiation pulsates in sync with the meter.
The being says, "Invaders of my universe, you are doomed. Your destiny is to die." Then a big-ass spider appears.
From another movie.
It screams in a weird voice.
But it doesn't sound very spider. I don't know what a spider would sound like if it was bigger than me. It's kind of terrifying, even if it is sometimes in shadow and sometimes black and white, sometimes in color.
Well, it's obvious black and white film, and they tinted the background because this is a color film.
Mm-hmm. It's from Bird Eye Gordon's The Spider.
Eric says there's one chance, no time to explain, but do as he does. Spread out. Eric starts shooting at the stalactites, and the others follow suit.
And what looks like a tentacle reaches out from the spider and grabs Don, but then the rocks drop on the spider, squishing it. And everyone looks really grossed out as spider goo oozes out of its body. And Don seems fine, like nothing ever touched him.
He checks the oxygen levels. They're down to only 1/3. "We've got to get back," announces Eric. As they run back to the field entrance and are running through those stalagmites, Eric trips and his suit is torn. He's losing air and bleeding.
Eric commands them to leave him. He'll just slow them down. But Don won't do that. Karl wants to stop the bleeding, but Don says, let it bleed. Once it freezes, that ice scab will reseal his suit hole. And it works.
Eric again tells them to leave him here, but Don refuses. Don't be a fool, Don, says Eric. You'll never make it. Then he starts to black out.
And then we have some sort of time or reality jump here. Eric wakes up on the ship, and the entity seems to have provided him with the caretaker, Ingrid.
Ingrid tells Eric that the others brought him back, and they're all fine. Indeed, we see each of them making out with imaginary women of their own choice.
Well, I remember seeing Karl making out with Ursula, and, of course, Don macking on Greta. But I didn't see Svend with his wife, and I didn't see Barry with anyone. I don't think Barry is into chicks, honestly, which is fine.
Eric says it's a good thing he was only out for a few hours. There's a lot of work to be done. Oh, it's been longer than that, says Ingrid. They brought you back here 3 days ago. What? Says Eric. Where are Don and Karl? Not here, says Ingrid. They're probably in the village.
This is not welcome news to Eric. And in the next scene, we see him in the ship, yelling at all the men. He never thought Don, of all of them, would fall for it. Why not?
He'd be the most likely to.
Yeah, he welcomed this.
Eric says that this alien has been exploiting their weaknesses since they arrived, and they walked right into his trap. Now they have only 24 hours to get out of Uranus's orbit, or they're not going to make it back to Earth.
Every hour from now brings them further and further from their optimal orbital position, and they may not have enough fuel to return if they wait much longer. So the men ask what they can do. Eric wants to destroy the entity, but how?
Fire, suggests Don. But Eric shoots down that idea. There's no oxygen, so fire won't burn. And acetylene torch would, says Don. But it turns out that would be too small and it wouldn't be able to do enough damage.
Karl suggests building a big-ass acetylene torch, and the others seize on that idea and figure out how to do it. They'll need some sort of booster.
They can get oxygen from the ship's support system and build a double-walled disc-type tank to transport it. Don knows that there's a blacksmith shop in the village in which they can work, so they all go to the village to get started.
Why does this village have a working blacksmith shop? It's all imaginary. But now we're there at the blacksmith shop, again, a figment of their imaginations, and they have the forge and blowtorches fired up. Metal is being smithed. Svend takes his gun and leaves, just as Greta, clad in a filmy black negligee, arrives to distract Don.
Don says he's busy and doesn't have time for this right now. Greta says, time for what? Destroying the alien? Don stops what he's doing. How do you know about that? Greta smiles. It won't do you any good, she says. Not for you or the others on Earth. Don wants to know what she means by that. Isn't it rather obvious by now? The Earth is going to be the new home for this being you call the alien. Don begs to differ. If that thing ever made it to Earth, they'll destroy it for sure. Will they, Don? What makes you so sure?
Why are you telling me this, Don demands. Who do you think is telling you this? Greta smiles, as the alien begins to speak for itself. It says, the Earth, so warm and full of life. I shall go there in one of your bodies. Man is so weak. I will bring a whole new race into being. Then the alien pieces out, leaving Don, Eric, Karl, and Barry standing there, guns drawn, with dumb looks on their faces. Eric says that this thing is testing them to see how dangerous they can be. So Eric vows to show it just how dangerous they're going to be at 0600 tomorrow.
They got a big day ahead of them, so Eric tells everybody to get back to the ship, except for Karl, who's left to guard the equipment.
Why are they leaving men alone on this mission? No one should ever be alone.
As Karl is standing at his post, his dream girl Ursula appears. Karl tells her that this isn't a good time. You don't want me? Says Ursula. I didn't say that, Karl says. Ursula coaxes him into letting her hang out by pointing out that he still has his gun, he can use it if he needs it, and she also coaxes him to sleep in her arms.
He's so tired. While he's out, a woman, we think Lise, comes into the room to swap out their weapon with a conjured-up replacement. She leaves, and Ursula wakes up Karl, who's feeling so much better now.
The next morning at 0600, the others return to go on their mission to destroy the alien. Everyone is suited up in their spacesuits and prepared to go beyond the barrier. They note that they shouldn't hook up the oxygen tank until they're ready to use it, and Svend has been directed to stay behind since, as a happily married man, he'll be least likely to fall for any of the alien's tricks.
Why doesn't the alien bring his wife there? Since none of these men can resist women. That would be, well, except again for Barry, that would be a good illusion to tempt him with. But as far as we know, his wife and daughter don't appear in this film, unless they're Ellen and Colleen. I wonder if Colleen was supposed to be Barry's dream girl, but then just never really materialized into the finished movie.
So the others go back to the cave where they last saw the alien. When they're in range, they hook up the oxygen tank to the, unbeknownst to them, fake acetylene torch. So when they try to fire upon the alien, nothing happens.
it vanishes.
The alien causes it to completely vanish. So Karl decides the next best thing to do is to charge at the alien.
Yeah, he grabs a weapon and charges just as Eric orders him to stop. Down, boy. But it's too late if the Wilhelm scream is any indication. The alien looks like a fake eyeball set into a tissue paper party decoration, ones that are shaped like balls. It's not a very good effect here.
We hear Karl's continued screams as the alien pulsates. Then Eric says that Karl has been buried within the alien. We haven't a chance, says Don. Oh, yes, we have, says Eric. The liquid oxygen. He asks Don what the temperature is. -10 degrees, Don replies. I thought so, says Eric. The alien is using the volcanic heat from the planet, so the liquid oxygen should neutralize it. Eric opens the tank and hurls it at the creature. Then they all fire their laser guns at it. Then they all hightail it back to the ship.
Eric, who's with the others and has made it past that barrier, messages Svend to prepare for an emergency takeoff. Although I think they should have been ready to go regardless because they planned to take off, so it shouldn't be an emergency. But anyway, Eric, Don, and Barry scramble through the woods to get back to the ship as the planet shakes and geysers erupt.
It's a Uranus quake.
Uranus is rumbling.
When they reach the ship, they find Ingrid lying in front of it. I wanted to see you again, she tells Eric. She asks him not to leave her here. Okay, I'll try, says Eric, and he picks her up, and he and the other men enter the rocket ship.
Eric straps her into a seat as she's barely conscious. And Sven asks about Karl, and he's told that Karl is dead. He looks sad for about a microsecond, then shakes his head and prepares for liftoff. And we see outside of the ship, all that fake greenery disappears. It's basically just a reverse of the shot that established it at the beginning of the movie.
Everyone takes their positions and buttons are pushed, rockets are thrusted, and the rocket blasts off.
They made it. They unbuckle their seat belts and check their monitors and say that everything's okay. Ingrid's now awake, and she's grinning at Eric like the cat that ate the canary. After she's unbuckled, she joins Eric at the window to watch them get away from Uranus. But as the seventh planet fades from their sight, so does she. Eric looks distinctly disappointed after she vanishes.
Then as the camera too pulls away from Uranus, the song Journey to the Seventh Planet plays, and the end credits roll.
But it's the same footage as the open. We don't see the ship heading back towards Earth. It's the ship heading towards Uranus. But we do get to hear the romantic love theme from Uranus. And that's the end. Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we're talking about Journey to the Seventh Planet from 1962.
Executive producer Sidney Pink made Angry Red Planet for AIP and had a contentious relationship with its president, Samuel Arkoff. In 2005, Pink told writer David C. Hayes, Arkoff and I had a working relationship. Neither of us trusted the other, which worked out well because I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. Jimmy Nicholson was the brains of that operation. With Arkoff, he never got a straight count, he said, referring to his share of the profits for that film.
But Pink returned to sci-fi in the AIP family with Journey to the Seventh Planet. In that same interview, he said, Journey was a delight for me. For the first time, I was able to do exactly what I thought needed to be done, without other approvals. As the author, director, and producer, my only limitation was my pocketbook and my imagination.
Pink recounted to Hayes how he came up with the story idea for Journey. The idea came from a theory I had read, that the human brain is so complex and vast in its potential that no human has ever been able to use more than 20% of its capacity. I love that story and regret to this day that I didn't nurture it more and give it the kind of budget and production values it really deserved. To my dying day, I shall maintain that Journey was and is a great sci-fi story. And at the considerable risk of being called egotistical, I must assert that the rip-offs of my story only help to prove its universality and fascination. I have seen the Star Trek cycle succeed with less worthy scripts.
Pink made Journey to the Seventh Planet in Denmark with $75,000 of his own money, as his two previous films, Angry Red Planet and Reptilicus, had yet to make any money. I think actually Reptilicus hadn't been released yet at this point.
Well, it was released in Denmark, but AIP spent some time preparing it for U.S. audiences before they released it many months later.
Working at Saga Studios in Copenhagen, Pink said his first hurdle was a spaceship set. He told Hayes, how do you build a spaceship in a country that scoffs at the very idea of it? That's where my burlesque stage experience came in very handy. Hayes said Pink overcame this by placing a few grills and installing a few sound meters in the walls and posting signs that read Starboard and Port Atomic Engine.
In December of 1960, Pink announced that he would be making Journey to the Seventh Planet with French actress Dani Carrel. He told the Los Angeles Times that he would write the American script and act as an American director as well as producer. That month, the LA Evening Citizen News announced that Journey was in its planning stages.
In January of 1961, Pink told the press that John Agar and Philippe Leroy had been added to the cast of Journey. In late January, the film was listed as Before the Cameras, so some of these casting notes didn't actually occur.
According to Mark McGee's Faster and Furiouser book, after Sidney Pink was finished with Journey, AIP spent more money upgrading the special effects. They went to Project Unlimited, a company owned by Tim Barr, Hua Chang, and Gene Warren, and asked them to work on the sequence involving a hypnotic one-eyed rat monster. A miniature cave was built, and the folks at Project tried to use a kinkajou for the monster, but it didn't work. Animator Jim Danforth was hired, and Hua Chang built a new creature using a stop-motion puppet built for a previous film.
AIP approved the design, but thought the finished product looked too much like a teddy bear, so Chang took off the fur and tried to make it more reptilian. Danforth was quoted as saying, "I had to work around the clock to meet the deadline. I was miffed because as far as I was concerned, we'd done it right the first time. I was still working on it Monday morning when some AIP people dropped in. I didn't know they were coming, and there was a sign I'd hung on the camera that said, 'AIP can go to hell.'"
In another sequence, the astronauts were supposed to be attacked by something the script called a mole grub. For this sequence, AIP took footage from Bird-Eye Gordon's The Spider and tinted it blue.
AIP's marketing department played up the beautiful women cast in Journey to the Seventh Planet. The write-up in the press book for the film divulges that Greta Thyssen was Miss Denmark 1954 and was a painter with a recent exhibition at Los Angeles Municipal Art Gallery, and that she had just finished her first novel called Public Image, soon to be published by Viking Press. Miehe Henrich, who played Ursula, was a Danish comedian and actress and was dubbed Denmark's answer to Shirley MacLaine by the Danish press, and she made her American screen debut in Journey. As for Anne Smyrner, despite her measurements, according to AIP, of 36, 28, 35, the actress was unable to leverage her success on the Danish stage to a career in film there, so she went to Germany, where she became, quote, one of that country's leading box office attractions. Motion picture, the press book informs us, were Anne's only hobby.
Journey to the Seventh Planet debuted on December 20th, 1961 in some markets like Texas, Louisiana, and North Dakota. When it went into wider release in March of 1962, it was paired with Pirate of the Black Hawk, a film group release which was also packaged for TV by AITV, according to IMDb, though we couldn't find any other sources that confirmed this. Other markets paired it with kiddie fare like Alakazam the Great.
American International's press book for Journey to the Seventh Planet recommended theater owners contact their local Air Force base or nearby missile manufacturing industry for use of space equipment, missile models, spacesuits, etc., to place in the lobby to generate interest in the film. They also suggested having a local ice vendor carve a creature from the film out of a block of ice to use for a contest promoting the film. Whoever guessed the time when the creature finally melted would win prizes.
They also said theater owners could put a buxom pretty girl in a spacesuit and have her go out in public handing out cards promoting the movie with the tagline, "See your unspeakable fears, deepest suppressed desires come to life to trap you in a never-before-experienced spectacle of terror."
Everyone wants to be trapped in a movie theater. According to Mark McGee's Faster and Furiouser book, Greta Thyssen appeared, quote, on an afternoon game show to plug the movie. "I'll bet it's great science fiction," the host said with enthusiasm. The actress dully replied, "Well, it's fiction." Taglines for Journey to the Seventh Planet include, "You are in space beyond space. Feel the pulsating horror in the world beyond our world."
Is the seventh planet a world with the seventh sense? Can they make things or people appear and disappear?
Have they new and terrifying powers of mind over matter?
You will probe the unknown, beyond the mysteries of the sixth sense. Your deepest, gravest fears pitted against you. You are trapped in a spectacle of terror.
How deep within us is hidden our forbidden desires, our unbearable fears? What is the terrible mystery of this world beyond our world?
What is this monstrous thing with the power of mind over matter?
Travel X times faster than imagination and journey to the seventh planet.
Box Office Magazine's review said Journey to the Seventh Planet will make a good supporting dueler and might play solo in a few strict action houses. Special effects in Cinemagic are realistic, but one slimy giant spider may be too horrific for tiny tots. Agar and Karl Ottosen, whose voice has been English dubbed, are best. The girls are beautiful. That's all.
The New York Times review was less kind, calling the film the dullest space project of 1962, and saying, quote, "A chap named Sidney Pink rates the ripest raspberry of the season for Journey to the Seventh Planet. For some remote reason, Mr. Pink directed, produced, and helped write this terrible little film, which has a quartet of poker-faced earthlings clumping around a seedy-looking planet, pawing a handful of mysteriously materializing girls, real or unreal, they're real lookers, and colliding with some rubbery-shaped monsters. The most expressive performance is given by a large one-eyed monster. Blinking and growling to beat the band, he's obviously pitching for an Oscar way ahead of time."
The Oakland Tribune's review said of Journey, John Agar and Greta Thyssen are the cast's best-known personalities, but their performances aren't any more interesting than those by lesser-known actors in this relatively sparkleless and dull, somewhat childish nightmare of a film.
A Mrs. Robert Johnson wrote to her local paper, the Salinas Californian, to complain about the coming attractions of Journey to the Seventh Planet being shown before a screening of Pinocchio, which she attended with her small children. She wrote that she was disgusted and enraged to see the previews of Journey and Pirates of the Black Hawk before the film. She wrote, "As I left, I complained to the manager. He did not seem too concerned about my complaints about the horrors in these previews, but kept asking me why I wasn't staying for the second feature." I believe this is our second Sidney Pink film. We did Reptilicus a while back. And you liked Reptilicus. I didn't care for it that much. So I'm interested to know if you think this is an improvement in any way from Reptilicus science-wise.
Well, yeah, we're dealing with pretty much the same production team, and even a couple of the actors, Karl Ottosen and Smyrner, appear in both. And what was done differently here, back when they did Reptilicus, they actually made two versions of the film. They made a Danish one and an English version, and then they wound up redubbing the English version because the accents were too funny for American audiences to handle. So since I guess that didn't work, they just did the one version for this and dubbed it. And one thing that really strikes me about the dubbing here is that a lot of the vocalization is really slow because they're trying best to match the mouth movements. Mm-hmm. So they'll pause in the middle of a sentence and then continue, and it's stilted and a little awkward.
Especially Greta Thyssen. I think her dubbing was probably the worst of everyone's.
None of it's good.
None of it's good. And it's kind of a shame because I think Karl Ottosen is supposed to be British, and he just has this sort of dull American voice. So I don't know why they're trying to convince us that he didn't come from America. He sounds like the other American on the ship. At least Barry O'Sullivan has an Irish lilt to his voice. Karl has a bit of an accent. Svend even does. But with Commander Eric, they're content to let him sound like a non-actor from America. So yeah, they could have done a lot better. I don't think AIP's dubbing is ever something that we're like, wow, that was great.
No, I can't think of any example where I would say that. But for nostalgic purposes, if nothing else, the AIP dubbed is the way to go because people who grew up watching these on television, that's the version that they would have seen. They wouldn't see the subtitle versions that are largely available now for a lot of the foreign films.
Mm-hmm. And yet I still want to hear people's own voices. I just like that better. I don't mind reading. We put the captions on for this anyway, so you might as well read it and hear their actual voices.
I think that one thing this film really misses out on is that they pronounce the planet as Uranus, where if they said Uranus, it would just be so much more fun.
Well, you know, the other pronunciation I've heard of the planet is Uranus, which you can also make fun of. So I feel like this was some sort of marketing decision made after the fact. Like, okay, we say Uranus, it sounds funny, but Uranus isn't much better. Let's invent an entirely new pronunciation for this planet that no one's ever used before. We're going to call it Uranus.
I can't think of any other examples that I've ever heard anywhere where they call it Uranus.
No, and they just don't want people like us to joke about how they're probing Uranus.
Well, tough.
That was the only joy we got out of this movie. For Uranus jokes, this movie would be pointless.
They kind of play up the Greta Thyssen character. I guess she plays herself as being a big deal, but I guess she was a much bigger deal in Denmark than she would be to American audiences. What I read was that she was the Denmark equivalent of the 3 M's in America.
Marilyn Monroe, Jane Mansfield,
and Mamie Van Doren.
She wasn't as buxom as Mamie Van Doren. Well, I think, obviously it's 2026 now, looking back at 1962, which is before I was even born, and we can say, yes, we don't know who she is, but from the description in AIP's press book, she was an author, she was an artist, she was on game shows, she was Miss Denmark. So I don't think she was as a non-entity then as she is now. But I could be wrong. I wasn't there.
I mean, she would almost have to have been somebody. She has second billing at the beginning of the movie, and she plays herself. So that usually means it's going to be somebody you recognize.
You would think. We don't know that she's playing Greta Thyssen. She's just playing Greta. Well, I did appreciate that they had almost as many, if not more, women in this cast than men. It was kind of disappointing that they were just all imaginary sex pots and not real characters. Maybe Ingrid had a bit of a personality.
Not really.
But not really. She was more of a information provider. And this is another movie where you can't get too hung up on the science of it all because it's all made up nonsense.
I think this movie would have been a lot more fun if they had one female crew member to just comment on what everybody else was going on. I'm sure she would have been harassed to no end.
Well, by Dawn.
But I think it could have had some interesting commentary if that were the case.
Yeah, and I wonder if the entity would create a man to distract her. And, men wrote this, so maybe it would work. But I don't know, maybe if a woman wrote this, it would be interesting to see the alien try to come up with an example of beefcake to tempt her with. I think I mentioned while we did the commentary some of the scientific things that bothered me. Like, you can't make imaginary atmosphere. So it made me wonder, is any of this real? Because they were kissing the girls. They would know if that was an illusion, wouldn't they?
I think it's more than an illusion. I think it's real, but it's not existing. Because they're obviously able to breathe the atmosphere, the alien is creating this environment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not the real Greta Thyssen who is always appearing before dawn. It's a facsimile, but it's a real facsimile.
Okay.
And then you have to wonder how involved the alien is in creating these, because Greta has all this information on it, and sometimes she has more as she's actually speaking for the alien. So are they all just puppets, or did they have their own free will, such as it is within this environment?
Because like when Eric's getting information from Ingrid, how does he know he can trust that information? He takes it at face value. But if the alien entity was as smart as it thinks it is, it would feed him false information. So it wouldn't be able to be outsmarted by them.
Yeah, this is an example of a film that we're not supposed to look at that closely.
Definitely not. Also, John Agar's in it. Boy, I don't like him.
Well, John Agar did make some good movies, just not necessarily for AIP, so you're not being exposed to them.
No, but his persona, his manner, is he not off-putting in other movies?
Well, yeah, his character in this movie, he's he's a sleazeball.
He's not a sleazeball, he's just horny.
No, he's
not afraid to tell everyone about it.
He's a sleazeball.
I think he's honest, though. He's not trying to pretend like he's monogamous.
Oh, not at all. One thing I think we need to mention is that Julian Burton does the voice of the alien. He's not credited, but we remember him from A Bucket of Blood. He was Maxwell, the poet that Dick Miller admired so much.
Oh, right. I loved him in that movie. So let's put a grade on Journey to the Seventh Planet using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic. Jeff, what grade do you give Journey to the Seventh Planet?
Well, unlike a lot of the films we watch for this podcast, Journey to the Seventh Planet is one that I'd seen before. It's been a couple of decades, and I didn't have too fond memories of it. And I'd say that those memories are pretty much upheld seeing it again. It may not be as bad as I remember it, but it's really not good. It's an adequate film. It passes by for 76 minutes. It could have been made a lot better if they had pronounced Uranus correctly. But beyond all that, it's a pleasant diversion for a waste of time. It's worth at least an eye. I can't give it any better than that. What are your thoughts?
Well, amazingly, I like this better than Reptilicus, which I think I gave it pathetic to because the monster's so dumb and the story wasn't for me.
Oh, the monsters here are so much better.
The monster here is very dumb too, but it's also not a big part of the movie. And I thought at least they're trying to be clever by using their minds against them. I don't think it was executed that well. And I think that it was kind of a one-trick pony where the only thing it could think of doing to control all these men was using beautiful women to distract them. And that says a lot more about what this movie thinks of men than it does of anything else. But again, I thought that was at least a clever way to get around the fact that they couldn't really make monsters for this movie on the budget that they had. They even had to steal one from another movie, Bird-Eye Gordon's The Spider. But yeah, I think it's still deserving of an I at least. I don't know. I just don't have much to say. It's okay. You know what I really hate, though, is that song at the end. It's so lame. So I would give the theme that comes up at the end a P, but the rest of the movie, it's average. It gets an I.
Well, fortunately, you don't have to travel as far as Uranus to find out more about Journey to the Seventh Planet. You only need to go as far as AIPPod.com. There you will find examples of posters, lobby cards, and trailers for not only Journey to the Seventh Planet, but for all the films we cover on American International Podcast. It's an ongoing project, and the goal is to preserve and organize this material in a way that's both accessible and engaging, whether you're a casual fan or a deep dive researcher. It's a long-term project, and we're building it out piece by piece, but the idea is simple, to create the kind of centralized, visually rich AIP archive that we've always wished existed, and to make it available to anyone who shares an interest in these films. You'll find all that at AIPPod.com.
And now I think it's time to give Uranus and mine a break Jeff and I are blasting off until it's time for our next journey into the AIP vaults. For the American International Podcast, I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.